Alright guys, welcome back to Pumpamentals, and today we will be speaking about why Bitcoin will likely pump past 100k US dollars due to the ESG narrative. But what is ESG and why does it matter for Bitcoin? ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance, and it is a framework used to assess the best business practices on sustainable and ethical issues for an investment, for example, a stock, bond, or an asset like Bitcoin. As we know, Bitcoin is digital gold, is peer-to-peer digital cash, a hedge against inflation and currency debasement. But did you know that in the deepest depth of the Bitcoin rabbit hole, mainstream financial institutions have begun to discover its most compelling use case yet?
Cryptocurrency is having a notable impact on the world's financial markets, but it's also affecting the environment.
Bitcoin uses more electricity annually than all of Argentina.
Bitcoin is an ESG asset. But how can this be? Isn't Bitcoin's energy use destroying the planet? I thought if you were ESG conscious, you would stay away from Bitcoin. This video will show you how the tides are turning, folks. This video will show you why all ESG compliant investors will soon find Bitcoin. It will show you why Bitcoin, being the ultimate in ESG assets, may sound unbelievable to you right now, but I can tell you, even the most ardent Bitcoin haters will certainly see the light after watching this video. This is certainly something you don't want to miss. This video is the result of me studying and following Bitcoin for over a decade, investing in both good and bad times. All these years of research will be given to you in this short video. So on that note, smash up the like, subscribe, and let's get started. ESG investing is used to encourage companies to act responsibly. Investors look at a company's or commodity's ESG score and use it to see if it meets their standards.
That if you want to invest in a company, they will, on their investor relations page, they'll show you their ESG score. It's very interesting to see how big investors like insurance company, institutional investors, they are steering away from anything that does not have the right ESG rating.
For years, the New York Times, Joe Biden's White House, and countless others have published hit pieces about the negative impacts of Bitcoin's energy use on the planet.
One transaction uses as much power as the average American household uses in about 2 months.
The world's second largest Bitcoin uses about the same amount of electricity as the entire country of Libya.
Get out of here. Get out of here, man!
Because of this, Bitcoin has been seen as ESG negative, even though many of these pieces are fraught with lies and over-exaggerations. As of late, though, we are seeing a sea of change. Since BlackRock filed for its spot Bitcoin ETF, every financial channel is proudly displaying the Bitcoin ticker symbol, tracking its price alongside the Dixie and the S&P 500. And Bitcoin mining's environmental positives have been leaking into the news cycle, where before all we heard was Bitcoin uses more energy than a small country,
New Zealand.
Now, instead, we're seeing more and more people waking up to the idea of Bitcoin being an ESG-friendly asset. Let's examine. We'll start with the sustainability investor Daniel Batten, who just appeared on What Bitcoin Did podcast with Peter McCormack.
And when you looked at Bitcoin mining over a life cycle, I came to the conclusion it was going to be net positive. There was no question that it had that potential.
And we'll be speaking about his 4 posts on X.com. Number 1, this chart tells us that Bitcoin mining is now the single most sustainably powered global industry in the world. Number 2, emissions of the Bitcoin network will be the same at the end of any 4-year cycle as they were at the start, something no other industry has ever accomplished. Number 3, Bitcoin has halved its emission intensity within the last 4 years to have the lowest emission intensity of any major global industry. And number 4, Bitcoin's major energy source is hydro. It's also the only major industry where fossil fuels is not the major source of power. A recent report found that 52% of the Bitcoin network is powered by using zero-emission energy. There are at least 29 mining companies that use 90 to 100% zero-emission energy, and another 12 that use emission negative energy sources. Compare that to the main electrical grid in the US, where only 36% comes from zero emission sources, and the rest of the energy comes from fossil fuels. Nick Carter states in his 2021 report for the Harvard Business Review that Bitcoin consumes as much energy as a small country. And yes, that may sound alarming, but the reality is way more complicated.
Look, Bitcoin absolutely is an industry that consumes a lot of energy. That is by design. We needed to find a way to issue the units fairly. So to create a unit of Bitcoin, miners have to burn some energy.
Ultimately, Nick argues that it's up to the crypto community to address the environmental concerns and to demonstrate that the societal value of Bitcoin is worth the resources that it needs. KPMG International, one of the big four accounting firms, along with Ernst & Young, Deloitte, and PwC, released a new report this year striking a friendly tone towards Bitcoin and its impact on the environment, citing Nick's report several times. The report challenges Wall Street's previous thinking. The firm's ultimate conclusion was that Bitcoin, and I quote, appears to provide a number of benefits across an ESG framework through stabilizing energy grids, reducing greenhouse gases, and providing sustainable heat for commercial and residential properties. The report says that despite Bitcoin's considerable energy use, it does not expel direct carbon emissions. It does run on electricity, however, which they say is primarily being sought after from underutilized hydro, wind, and solar sources, which we know to be true. What this means in practice is that in case you have a wind power plant or a hydropower plant and you get a lot of energy generated during a time period where there is no consumer demand for that energy, normally that energy would go to waste, because normally you cannot store energy in an efficient manner. You always need to consume energy whenever it is produced for the electricity companies to make any money. But now, whenever you have any kind of excess energy, it's no longer wasted. Instead, you can mine Bitcoin and you become more profitable as a renewable energy producer, because you always have a buyer of last resort for your energy. And this is Bitcoin mining, because you can mine anywhere in the world, anytime in the world. You can shut on and off your miner at any time, giving you a lot of flexibility to choose for yourself when you want to mine, when you want to stop mining. And in many cases, you as an energy producer don't have a lot of choice and a lot of control over when the energy excess will happen, because it depends on the market, it depends on the consumer demand for your electricity. Unfortunately, Bitcoin's detractors never look under the surface and never examine where the electricity comes from. They're only focused on the amount of electricity used.
Bitcoin's energy consumption reaches a mighty amount of 133.68 terawatt hours per annum.
Come on now, dawg. Come on, man.
That was the rationale behind Biden's failed 30% tax on Bitcoin miners. Citing Nick's paper again, KPMG pushed back on that view, saying that Bitcoin only uses 0.55% of the world's electricity. And notably, Bitcoin Mining Council's newest report puts that number at 0.17%. The banking industry uses 56 times more power than that.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
And the banking industry is not catering to all people on the planet. There are billions of people on this planet who don't have a bank account. And yet, the banking industry uses 56 times more power than Bitcoin. And Bitcoin, as you know, can be used by anyone, anywhere, at any time. The KPMG report also delves into the nuances of Bitcoin and energy grid function, particularly in regards to wind and solar. And I quote, renewable energy facilities are incentivized to produce at their maximum capacity. This can leave utilities with an excess supply of electricity. Couple that with a supply and demand mismatch, and Bitcoin miners can adjust their power consumption during times of excess supply and or low market demand and help to stabilize the grid. And as a persistent buyer of electricity, Bitcoin miners absorb any excess energy created, improving the efficiency and lowering the cost for consumers. No other industry can perform this function. KPMG also points out that this provides an incentive for companies to build out larger renewable energy sites, pushing the development of renewables and facilitating a faster transition away from fossil fuels into the renewable energy paradigm. The report also mentions how mining rigs generate a significant heat byproduct while they're running. The applications there are endless. Beyond Bitcoin's ability to heat homes, Bitcoin mining is actually stopping pollution itself. Through a process called gas flaring, the fracking sites across the world are burning methane gas and polluting the atmosphere. Bitcoin miners capture this flared gas and power their mining equipment with it. There is enough flared gas in the US and Canada to power the entire Bitcoin network. Shout out to Joshua Jake, who posted a quote from a recent report by the Institute of Risk Management. I quote, "How can Bitcoin hit 500k? Simple. Convert wasted energy into a net value." Then he quotes the paper. Bitcoin mining can reduce global emissions by up to 8% by 2030. This can be done by converting the world's wasted methane emissions into the Bitcoin mining. There is also the opportunity for Bitcoin to clean up the oceans, to use the byproduct waste from burning plastic and convert it into zero-emission energy to mine Bitcoin. Folks, this is something with serious legs that is only now coming to light. I've been covering Bitcoin since 2016, and only in the last few months have these stories been making headlines. If you Google Bitcoin mining and you Google about the sustainability of the Bitcoin mining, you will see story after story, and you see that the tide is definitely turned. Now let's move to the S in ESG and explore some of the Bitcoin's social impacts. Perhaps one of Bitcoin's most compelling use cases and social benefits is its ability to replace cross-border payments. Big companies like Western Union charge exorbitantly high fees to their customers to even transfer the smallest amounts of money. Inbound remittances from family members living abroad make up a significant portion of the GDP for certain countries, sometimes over 20%. With Bitcoin, these payments take place instantly and with far cheaper transaction fees. Yet another socially important attribute of Bitcoin is its ability to provide people with electricity. It's estimated that approximately 770 million people around the globe do not have access to electricity. A lack of infrastructure is one of the driving forces behind this. It's common for these areas to rely on microgrids that struggle to remain financially viable. Bitcoin miners allow the operators to monetize what would have otherwise been wasted energy. Therefore, we get to governance. Before we get to governance, let's speak about one more of Bitcoin's social benefits, and it's a big one: financial inclusion, banking the unbanked. Put simply, Bitcoin users do not need banks or money processors to send and receive money. Bitcoin's decentralized network enables the unbanked to bypass government and regulatory restrictions, eliminating the need for any third party. The World Bank estimates that nearly 1.4 billion people around the world do not have access to financial services such as a bank account. With Bitcoin, they do. Now, let's move on to the governance aspect and how Bitcoin's properties make it an absolute G in the ESG framework. As we just mentioned, one of Bitcoin's most prominent features is its decentralization, which removes the need for an intermediary. It's thousands of participants or nodes all running the same software, the 21 million coin limit, the difficulty adjustment, the block size reduction schedule make Bitcoin's robust and highly redundant governance system a feature of its design. No individual or group of individuals can make changes to the protocol without splitting or forking off from the main network. Additionally, the transactional data that resides within the Bitcoin ledger or blockchain is immutable and secured forever via cryptography. Good governance is vital for any organization's long-term success and includes risk management, decision-making, transparency, compliance, and ethical behavior, all of which are at the core of Bitcoin's ethos. In conclusion, this video has demonstrated why Bitcoin is great for environment, how it is actually reducing CO2 emissions, and most importantly, why it's good for governance issues and social issues. Understanding all of this, you now know why Bitcoin is destined to go above $100,000. Because even if we just solve one of the problems mentioned in this video, for example, that we can use all of the unused energy and power Bitcoin using it, that's already a multi-trillion-dollar use case. And Bitcoin will dominate that use case. And then, of course, you have all of the other things mentioned as well. If you like this episode, smash up the like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you very, very soon here on Pumpamentals.